Chapter 10. 1. I did something I've never done before after we cleared the pump blockage and patched all the leaks. I shared my sweets. My mother had packed plenty of the candies that she knew I liked, but would never ever get to buy again once I boarded the Ark. Now that I think about it, she must have ferreted these packets of sweets away long before we even had to move to the safety of the army base in the Lake District. I'd never felt so fond of some sweets before. They never meant this much. My mum had accepted my future, and she had planned ahead. That's a mother's love. As I held my entire supply in my hands, displayed for the crowd of tired teenagers, I felt a crushing sadness. I missed my mum, dad, and little brother. They'd only been dead about 3 hours, and here we were, celebrating. Anxious faces eyeing the sweets filled my vision. Despite my sadness, I was enjoying the camaraderie on the Ark. Everyone in front of me had banded together and worked hard to solve a problem that threatened our lives. These candies were their reward, and there was more than enough to go around. Mum and Dad would be proud of me for sharing too. I stood on one of the tables in the cafeteria, a sturdy, bolted-down table with plastic fold-out seats surrounding it. "To the smart kids in the control center!" I yelled, and threw 8 sweet packets to Bay. She caught them and distributed them to the kids who had helped her access the systems and make sense of it all. There was a cheer from that part of the crowd. "To the kids who fixed the leaks!" I added, throwing more packets to Sana, who gave them away joyfully. "To the kids who found and fixed the blockages," I said, as a finale, showering everyone around me with sweets. Then something I didn't expect happened. Ilarion raised his hand in the crowd. "To the one who took a swim," Ilarion said. He threw a jelly-fried egg up to me. I caught it and popped it into my open mouth. Everyone applauded. I raised my arms into the air victoriously, and then choked briefly on the sweets, coughing. Everyone laughed. That they admired me and thanked me made me feel really lucky. Maybe we were becoming like a family. "To the crew of the Ark," Coiler cried. Everyone cheered at that, and raised their plastic cups of water into the air. They clinked together with a dull tap. A lot of liquid was spilled as those cups struck one another. "Another leak!" shouted Pilar from Chile. There was more laughter. We were all smiling, chatting about our victory. Then the purple lines that led us into the theatre before reappeared in the air above us. Dr. Ghost's voice then echoed over the ship's intercom. "Children, it is time for dinner. Please make your way to the cafeteria to receive your evening meal," the voice said. The recording must not know we were already there. A Scottish boy called Carlton called out to the ship, correcting its error. Many of the kids laughed. All around the outer walls of the cafeteria, the food dispensers activated. Each was basically a portal in the wall with a small dumb waiter that would lower a plate of steaming food down on trays. Each tray was separated into different compartments for different foodstuffs. The cafeteria was a warm and brightly coloured room. It looked like the food court in a shopping mall. The seats and tables were smooth plastic, easy to clean, I suppose. It was a place I wouldn't mind eating in for the next 2 years. No one needed prompting to start feasting. We were all starving, growing kids, so we all lined up with our trays, got our food, and found our seats. For the first time, we all started to socialise properly. We sat at tables, swapping anecdotes about what we had just accomplished, among other things. It was nice to feel and look normal for a few moments. I took my seat at a table with Jalind, Ilarion, Koila Bay, Sana Agwami, and Kwamalu. "Where did you learn all about that plumbing stuff?" I asked Sana. "My father worked on an oil pumping station on the Red Sea. My family lived on the site so we could monitor it all day. The owner of the pumping station wasn't generous with funds for repairs, so my father had to make do with things at hand. He made a patch like the one we used with a polystyrene box that was washed ashore once." Helping him, I picked up a few things. "And you, Ilarion?" I asked the Russian boy. "Same kind of thing, actually," he said. "I worked as an apprentice at an oil refinery." "An apprentice at 15?" I asked. "Best to start early at a job you'll be doing for the rest of your life." That's what my dad said. "And when we needed every ounce of oil to keep us warm after the destroyer arrived, they started taking on 13-year-olds. School took a back seat to survival," Ilarion replied. "I never went to school," Koya said, somewhat bashfully. "Luckily, you never needed to, especially now that we have these memories," Agwami said, tapping his head. "Without Captain Amos, I wouldn't have been brave enough to climb into that pipe," I said. "And without Mr. Gates's memories, I might never have figured out these computers," Jolind added. We sat in silence for a moment as we thought about those memories rattling around in our heads and what they had just done to us. It's hard to believe, isn't it? We carry the memories of people who are all gone now, but who will get to help us with their experiences, Jolind said, picking at some food with her fork as she spoke. "We're very fortunate," Ilarion said. "Not just for the skills they gave us, either. Before the memories, I'd never been more than 10 miles from my home. These implants opened my mind to the rest of the planet and to their lives. Each injection was like a spectacular adventure. Where did you receive yours? I asked, curious of the logistics of it all. When I was selected, taken from my home by government officials and brought to Moscow, where Dr. Ghost was waiting for me. Afterward, my government kept me and my family in the capital. I received injections from Russian doctors in the Kremlin until the teleport, Ilarion said. The whole time, the Muscovites were rebelling against the government for failing to protect them. Every soldier and civilian in the building fought, all to protect me. When the teleport finally happened, the protesters were storming the building. A few more moments and I might not survive to see the world end. Wow, I said. We're glad you're here. Ilarion smiled and nodded. I was in the same base as you, Callum, Coiler chimed in. They must have kept us separate, I said. For security? Coiler agreed. I was in the Saudi desert, Sana said. The desert? That's a weird place to stay, Bay said. I didn't have a choice, Sana explained. After I was chosen, my government took me to the home of one of the wealthiest princes. His home in the desert was built over a spring. I lived like a princess until the teleport. All the protests happened near government buildings in the city, so they left us alone. I was probably in the safest place possible. I was kept along with the Japanese representative, Bay said. We were on an aircraft carrier in the South China Sea. You were on the ocean, I asked. That must have been dangerous with the destroyer out there sucking up all the water. Not really, Bay said. We floated around for a while, and eventually the water level dropped around us. We were isolated in a small lake of water, separated from the rest of the ocean, so the destroyer couldn't even find us. There were a few ships trapped with us, so the adults linked them together to form a small city. I spent the time before the teleport with the Chinese and Vietnamese representatives. As I digested this story, I realized that my experience, spending my last days in relative comfort, surrounded by my family, was pretty easy. I tried to imagine being trapped on the ship or sitting in a desert palace. Their stories didn't sound like real life, but like TV shows. I scanned the table, looking for anyone else who wanted to offer a story, but Coiler broke the silence. I still don't understand why they had to inject their memories, he said. Couldn't they just done it in a less painful way? He lifted his sleeve and checked the crook of his right arm. There, in the soft, springy part of his arm, was a raised scar at the site of multiple injections we had received. We all followed Coiler's example and showed off our scars. The one thing, other than surviving, that we all had in common. I felt my scar. It was a memory of its own. How else would they have done it? I asked. They should have put it in candy, Sana said as she ate her last sweet. Yeah, they could have put it in this food, Bay said, as she took a bite. Who's making our food here anyway? Gerlind asked. I looked over my shoulder at the dispensers, which had all shut down now that we were fed. Robots, I guess? Ilarion scoffed. Robots, what do they know about cooking? All they need to know is how to measure ingredients, chop, grate, and heat them properly, Coiler said. I think a robot could do that. At least this is food we recognize, I said, although I wouldn't have minded the dehydrated food that astronauts eat. We're all astronauts now, Bay said. But I always wanted to be a fireman, Coiler said. I dreamt of being a nurse, Gerlind said. You might still get to be a nurse too. Well, I want to be rich, said Ilarion. We all laughed. The question is, what are we going to do on this ship? Ogwami asked. Are we engineers, doctors, decorators? What is the daily routine around here? There must be one. I'm sure Dr. Ghost would tell us, I said. I'm not sure I want to spend 2 years listening to a computer, Ilarion replied. Yeah, I said. I didn't think that we would be here alone, you know. Some kind of adult supervision would be nice. As we finished our meals, the purple lines above us disappeared and were replaced by green ones. Each started at every table and pointed towards one of the entrances to the cafeteria. Are we supposed to follow that? One boy called out from another table. I don't know, I said, standing from my seat. We all stared at the doorway, now lit fully green. The cafeteria became eerily quiet. And then we heard the footsteps. They said a lot about whatever was approaching the door. Each step was purposeful and equally spaced. Plus, they were loud footfalls, but not quite stomps. The green light dimmed as the door opened. And that's when I saw the weirdest person I had ever seen. Thank you for listening to this chapter from Stolen Futures. Please like or comment on this video, and subscribe to The Eighth Plot so you don't miss out on the next installment of this book. Goodbye.